What if I told you the invention of the ice cream cone was a happy little accident at a World's Fair that potentially saved countless lives from the spread of disease? The story of who invented the ice cream cone is a mistake wrapped in a mystery, wrapped in a legend. We start in the early 1900s, when hundreds of thousands of Americans were dying every decade from contaminated food and water. It was not a great time for hygiene. Here's an example. Say you wanted to go out and get a nice, sweet ice cream treat. Well, be careful on your way, because America literally had a public spitting problem at the time. People, mostly men, were hawking tobacco loogies wherever and whenever they wanted. This happened so much, they had to make anti-spitting laws. Say you make it to the ice cream vendor spit-free. Better hope the milk they used wasn't spoiled or otherwise contaminated, because milk at the turn of the 20th century, honestly, disgusting. You could get a batch filled with chalk or plaster to keep it white. That actually happened. But hey, maybe you got one of the good batches of milk for your ice cream. Time to enjoy a nice, relaxing, delicious treat licked out of a small bowl countless other strangers had used without being properly cleaned. That's right, they were called penny licks. And they were so rarely washed that they contributed to the spread of diseases like cholera and typhoid at the time. That was the norm, though. And if you were headed to the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis, you'd expect to have your ice cream out of a good old penny lick. But it just so happens that at that World's Fair, as legend has it, one small mistake would change the course of ice cream consumption forever, and maybe even save some lives. Ah, the World's Fair. They were all the rage in America in the early 1900s. And the 1904 fair had dazzling displays of innovation. The fair spanned 1,200 acres inside the St. Louis city limits. It cost $20 million to build and operate, which would be a staggering $800 million today. Over the 7 months it was open, nearly 20 million visitors showed up. That's a lot of people to meet in St. Louis. But it wouldn't be a fair if there wasn't food. And this one didn't disappoint. Sure, it had all of what we now think of as the classics: hot dogs, hamburgers, cotton candy. But there were also cafes and restaurants like the Chinese Village, the Streets of Cairo, the Irish Village. An Austrian fair served at the Grand Tyrolean restaurant that sat 2,500 people. Food was everywhere. There was even a palace of agriculture where you could worship at the feet of an elephant made out of almonds, a 10-foot-tall bear made out of prunes, and a life-size Teddy Roosevelt on horseback made out of butter. Is it really a fair if there isn't someone made out of butter? And of course, there was ice cream. And with ice cream in 1904 also came
the penny lick.
All right, I've got to stop and fully explain this. People would spend 1 penny to buy a small glass of ice cream. They would then lick the ice cream out of it and give it back to be reused for the next customer. And it would be reused without being properly washed. Health authorities finally came to their senses around the beginning of the 20th century and began to ban them because, once again, they were worried about the spread of diseases like cholera and typhoid. So, what's a fair goer to do? How can you enjoy your ice cream and not get cholera? Well, as the story goes, it's a sweltering summer in 1904. Temperatures are as high as 90 degrees and humid. The perfect day for ice cream. An ice cream vendor is doling out penny lick after penny lick when he runs out. What does he do now? The people need ice cream. Well, luckily for him, the vendor right next door is selling zalabia, a Syrian version of a Middle Eastern and Central Asian dessert that's kind of like a funnel cake. They realize they could take the dough, flatten it, and roll it into a cone, pop some ice cream in, and voila, the ice cream cone is born. It's a great story of American ingenuity, making a mishap into a miracle. Except we can't really be sure that it actually happened. But it's a story that stuck, and 3 different people have all claimed to be the genius behind this combination. Italian-born Italo Marchioni, the ice cream vendor, claims he asked Zalabia vendor Ernest Humvee for the funnel cake. But Humvee, a Syrian businessman himself, says he approached an entirely different ice cream vendor with the idea. And then there's Syrian salesman Abe Dumar, who claims he approached both vendors with the idea after simply observing the shortage of penny licks. But the basics of the story, no more penny licks, Zalabia turned into waffle cone, have persisted. Why? Well, mostly marketing. It's a great story. And associating with the World's Fair gets the people talking. But the ice cream cone had another unique selling angle that was perfect for the time. In 1904, safe and healthy food was the name of the marketing game. The fair even hosted a pure food exhibit inside the Palace of Agriculture. There you could learn all about the dangers of mass-manufactured food. Louis Pasteur and other scientists had already demonstrated that germs cause diseases. And with an increasing awareness of food as a carrier of these germs, people were starting to become a bit more conscious of their diets and eating healthier. So with the fair already focused on food safety, it was the perfect moment for the ice cream cone to take off. Right after the fair, a newspaper article praised the cone for its daintiness and neatness. There was an ice cream cone company in Oklahoma City that adopted the name the Sanitary Ice Cream Cone Company, and an inventor in Michigan patented an even safer ice cream cone that came in a sanitary wrapper. The ice cream cone was an inherently safer product at a time when safety was all the rage. It could be mass-produced, and people just plain loved eating them. Bye-bye cholera, hello delicious, safe ice cream. So the next time you crunch into that cone, remember, a stumble can be a scoop, and the bumps along the way are how we build a more delicious America, one happy accident at a time.